Give them pleasure. The same pleasure they get when they wake up from a nightmare. The more successful the villain, the more successful the picture. There is no terror in the bang, but in the anticipation of it. Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock has influenced modern film with directors and writers such as Tarantino and Spielberg with his style, thoughts, and brilliance. The master of suspense, Hitchcock himself, has led a generation of new horror with his directing style that's legacy still appears in cinema today. 44 years, 65 films, countless awards, and after every advance in cinema such as sound, color, and 3D, Hitchcock's inspirations allude to his childhood and his fascination with natural corruption. Actors should be treated like cattle. Hitchcock was not always a big fan of the actors he had to work with. Sometimes taking days to shoot a single scene did not make him very popular with them either. In pictures such as Marnie, Hitchcock implied James Bond had found tones in his acting that had never been seen before, in which many others were fond of the styles of Alfred Hitchcock. Though that was big in his legacy, he had other talents that far surpassed that aspect. Adding movies without sound seemed absurd today, but Hitchcock had a talent for knowing when to use sound and when not to. To make pictures even more terrifying, adding the wild card of the Hitchcock films, the MacGuffin, adding humor to surprisingly make the picture more creepy or suspenseful, and of course adding the infamous Hitchcock cameo, that is the last touch on a picture. Born in London, 1899, Hitchcock worked as an engineer and went to the University of London before diving into the world of motion pictures in the 1920s. But in these early days, Hitchcock was very obese and surrounded by a strict Catholic family. He became very lonely and sheltered. Imagine your father scolding you and telling you to walk down to the police station and have them lock you up for 10 minutes as punishment. Well, Hitchcock lived it, standing at the foot of his mother's bed for hours on end as a form of punishment. I think my mother scared me when I was 3 months old. You see, she said, "Boo." It gave me the hiccups, and she apparently was very satisfied. Alfred Hitchcock. Here we see glimpses of Hitchcock's past that inspired the wrongful accusations and harsh treatment in his films.
The first Hitchcock movie I remember watching was The Birds. It was a Daphne du Maurier story. I remember seeing that movie and being scared to death because I was really small at the time, and I watched it on TV with my parents. And in one of the scenes, the lady gets her eye pecked out by a bird, and it was just creepy. And I didn't know much about Hitchcock at that. And then my dad took me and my friend Nicholas Marshall to go see Psycho at the College of Idaho. And at that time, it was the scariest movie I'd ever seen in my life. So when I think of Hitchcock, I think of horror, I think of suspense, I think of screwing with people's minds.
One woman, Tippi Hedren, actress that soon became the object of Hitchcock's eyes in life and through the camera. If you have seen many Hitchcock pictures, one of the recurring themes are the ladies with the blonde hair. Hitchcock never missed out on a chance to make a pretty blonde lady the star of a film. No one really thought much of it till Hedren. Hitchcock had become obsessed with her after casting her in The Birds. Hitchcock was known to use his power in the studio to woo his women into bed. Now, Hedren has admitted that the unwanted sexual advances and his control over her work during the early days of being an actress basically ruined her career for her. BBC Two has released a new television series called The Girl, which is based on a story of Hedren and Hitchcock. The show has gotten approval by Hedren herself. The way Hitchcock behaved and the effect it had on me is absolutely true. Along with The Girl, we see many productions inspired and followed from Hitchcock's films. The show Bates Motel is a series in which the story of Psycho is told from a modern point of view with a few twists and turns. Martin Scorsese in his film Shutter Island makes a list of references with his scenes, words, and music to Hitchcock films such as Psycho, North by Northwest, Spellbound, Vertigo, Notorious, and Marnie. Gone Girl, a film by David Fincher, has multiple camera angles and tricks Hitchcock used in Psycho.
Of course, there are those most memorable movies, which would be Psycho and The Birds, and I watched them many years ago, and Birds watching still has an impact upon me. I don't know whether or not to trust them, all because of Hitchcock. I don't think you can think of Hitchcock without thinking of black and white either. He was a master at directing, and the mystery and the thrill of the chase. No one could quite do it like he could.
For example, Hitchcock used the close-up behind a woman focusing on her hair, usually in a bun, but was a sign of a vortex, where he would get wrapped up in these platinum blonde leads and their roles in film. Not quite the climax of the movie, but what caused it. The MacGuffin is a plot device that Hitchcock used in almost every single one of his films. A MacGuffin is the wild card, the random note that shows up on your door before a murder, the suspicious character, the thing, whatever it might be, that is wrong or odd about a situation. The MacGuffin is a powerful use of suspense and mystery. Humor can also do much more mixed with suspense and terror. Hitchcock used it in ways that you would laugh but knew that what was about to happen would not be funny, creating irony surrounding drama with happy settings, or adding characters who just can't take murder seriously are ways that Hitchcock added humor to his films. I have wormed my way into my own pictures as a spy. A director should see how the other half lives. Hitchcock wanted a way to connect with his actors, but also with his audience. He wanted the audience to know that that was his film, so he put his own unique signature on his films, the cameo. Directors such as Spielberg and Tarantino also started putting their own signatures on their films, just like Hitchcock.
I don't think of Hitchcock as the master of horror, but more as the master of suspense, because he never really displayed the graphics of the gore and the violence and things like that. There was always just a suggestion. And you saw that on his TV program where he had the outline of his torso, and then he moved into it, going from the shadow to the reality. And then he always had some sort of sarcastic quip about the show that you were about to see, which kind of gave you a foretaste and left you curious as about what was going to come. The movie that I remember most about Alfred Hitchcock was called The Man Who Knew Too Much, about a couple in a foreign country, and they see something that they're not supposed to see, and their son gets kidnapped. Doris Day was the female lead in that movie. And there was one point where there was an assassination attempt, and she and her husband had found out about it. And she's in this opera house, and you can hear the orchestra, and there are people singing. And there's a very dramatic break in the music for about 1 second. And at that point, Doris Day sees the weapon aimed at the intended victim, and she screams, and the whole house comes apart, and then eventually they get their son back. But it was just a very suspenseful moment in time that that made you want to see more of Alfred Hitchcock.